So here's the deal. You guys are here for the first charity matchmaking symposium that we're doing in Fairfield County. I don't know of other ones done elsewhere. And hopefully years from now, you'll be able to say you were at this first, and this will grow in numbers and prestige and people understanding what we're trying to do today. I'm going to get the show on the road, introducing one person on the panel at the time, each of whom is being asked the same question, which is, what is the one thing that you recommend for businesses trying to work with a nonprofit? So you can get your note-taking out, because you're probably going to get a variety of different answers to the question. The first person on our panel is Tom Gabriel, who is the Director of Development for the Greenwich United Way. He has more than 20 years of professional experience in the nonprofit sector. And for the past 8.5 years, he has been the Director of Development, which is the euphemistic, nice way of saying he's got to get money, right? At the Greenwich United Way, he's responsible, his job is responsible for raising $3 million every year through a comprehensive fundraising effort, including major gifts, special events, grants, and direct mail, email appeals. And so he works with more than 500 volunteers annually as part of the United Way's overall development strategy. So let's welcome Tom Gabriel. Go ahead and take the mic. Tom, what is the one thing you recommend for businesses trying to work with nonprofits?
Plenty of alcohol. Just kidding. Flexibility. And let me explain what I mean by that. First of all, Lisa, thank you very much. Fern, thank you for having me here. And to my distinguished panel members, pleasure to be up here with you. The nonprofit landscape, the philanthropic landscape, is changing dramatically since the recession. Charitable giving nationally is down something like 13%, although it's gone up a slight tick past couple of years. And local agencies are reporting, about 90% of local agencies here in Fairfield County are reporting a dramatic increase in the demand for services. So their need for philanthropic support is at an all-time high. That also means that their need to reinvent themselves, to market themselves to people who are going to support them philanthropically, has got to change, because business as usual is no longer going to work. When I talk about flexibility, what I'm talking about is that nonprofit organizations have got to do something a little differently to reach out to all of you, to attract you to their business model, to their mission. And conversely, you need to be a little flexible in working with them, because there really is synergy in working with a nonprofit organization. Besides the philanthropic model of you're helping people in the community, there's also a great opportunity for cause-related marketing, to tie yourself to a particular mission, to a particular cause, to show the larger community what your organization is all about, what your business is all about, and at the same time, generate business for yourself. So what I'm going to do today is talk about just some creative and innovative ways that various nonprofit organizations that we, through the Greenwich United Way, work with, and that how they're working with other businesses. But before I do that, I'm going to take 20, 30 seconds to tell you a little bit about what the United Way is, because I would be remiss if I didn't give that elevator speech. The United Way is the local strategic planning entity in the town of Greenwich. What I mean by that is there's no other entity, government or nonprofit related, that looks at the human service needs in the community. We conduct a needs assessment every couple of years. Those are focus groups, questionnaires sent to service providers, recipients of services, et cetera, and identify what the real tangible local needs are in the community. We then leverage and foster collaborations with other service providers and businesses in the town government to create local programs in the town of Greenwich, and then continue to invest dollars in those programs to make sure that they continue. So we're in a unique position to work with dozens of different partner agencies in the town of Greenwich and the surrounding community, some in Stamford, et cetera. So back to what I was going to say before about some of the unique and creative ways to work with nonprofit organizations. All nonprofit organizations need financial investment. I'm not going to lie to you and say, look, they want your in-kind donations, they want your contribution of time. Of course, that's helpful, they'll take that, but all ultimately want a financial contribution, because that's where they have the most flexibility themselves to leverage additional support and at the same time invest into the programs and services that they're running. But there's some creative and innovative ways for you to give financial support that at the same time helps them. For example, There's an organization in Greenwich called TAG. It's called the Transportation Association of Greenwich. They do the incredibly unsexy job of driving seniors and the frail elderly around the community. Not a program that a lot of people want to support. But they have dozens of giant buses that drive around the community every day. A wonderful opportunity for a business who wants to market to the senior community to advertise on the sides of those buses. Another example is a lot of organizations have very specific events. The United Way, for example, has a women's initiative called the Soul Sisters. That's S-O-L-E, as in the soul of a shoe. Great opportunity for a shoe company to get involved. Kids in Crisis runs their Hoedown. So you can think of all these various different events that organizations are planning that might tie into your particular models. Another thing you can do now to go back to, or to continue to talk about fundraising events or financial contributions is host shopping days, where you're inviting the nonprofits, supporters and friends into your business, where they're shopping and you're contributing a percentage of those, of the people in those sales back to the nonprofit organization. But there's also other ways that you can support. You could, I will pass it on now.
Okay, Tom, but thank you, because
And
we're
I'll
going to
leave
have a
you in
lot of
suspense.
Q&A, and that's why we're doing all our dances and everything else. Okay, so, and by the way, on this panel, I would like to explain to you that we have representatives from both the business sector and the nonprofit sector. So we're asking you what you recommend for businesses trying to work with nonprofit, but that question can also be flipped on its head. What do you recommend for nonprofit trying to work with business? If you're on the business side, I'd like to hear from you about your advice to the nonprofits. As the nonprofits, you're giving really advice to the business. Got it? Okay. All right, let's go to Julia Wade. Julia is the director of Volunteers for DOMUS, and Julia has been with them since 2010, placing thousands of volunteers in activities that range from skills-based assignments to distinctive done-in-a-day projects, weekly mentoring or tutoring meetings, and she has created a model that is challenging and rewarding for volunteers who become part of the DOMUS family. Prior to this, Julia was a program manager for the Stamford Partnership. So welcome, Julia. Hi.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. I'd just like to see a show of hands because I see some friends here. How many of you are nonprofits? You are my brothers and sisters, are you not? Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for-profit panelists for joining us. So I just wanted to sort of take a step back, talk a little bit less about DOMUS, and talk a little bit more about the global landscape. So in Connecticut, the average volunteer is, the value is $28.26. There's an independent sector which gives a dollar value for nonprofit hours. At DOMUS, we had 29 groups representing 421 volunteers for over 2,000 hours of service. That translates into about $200,000 of in-kind services provided just by the groups that we had. On a global view, Volunteer Match is the world leader in volunteer websites. They estimate that their return on their investment was $630 million and more. And Volunteer Match is just one small piece of the volunteer world. So actually, in-kind services represent billions of dollars of services that are given to nonprofits. One of the things that I think is interesting isn't just the dollar amount that nonprofits can provide in those kinds of services, because corporations and for-profit companies recognize that we're out chumming for money. It is actually what can be done for the partner itself. So a Gallup poll in 2011 showed that 71% of US workers are not engaged, 19% of them are actively not engaged. And one of the ways that they represent that you can turn that around is in fact through a volunteer program. So 71% of employees who participated in a volunteer activity felt more positive about their company as a result. 50,000 employees showed that by increasing employee engagement levels, organizations can expect an 87% reduction in employees' probability of departure. So it's not just that volunteering is good for us, it is that volunteering is good for the business as well. Not just good for the business, but it is also for not just corporate health, but it's also good health for the individual. There was a study that came out where volunteers who volunteered for altruistic reasons, 4.3%, there was a reduction in mortality. So it says of the 2,000 non-volunteers, 4.3% were deceased 4 years later, compared with 1.6% of altruistic volunteers. So if in fact you volunteer for altruistic reasons, you can expect to live longer. One caveat is that those who volunteer for self-centered reasons, which is it's good for me and not for you, do not reap the same benefits. So can I just say that you must be volunteering for the right reasons? So the question is how do you start? What is it, the one thing that you can do? The one thing that you can do is to find an agency to partner with. Now, I'm here on the dais with our United Way partners, and of course, that could be the partner, which then opens you up to the entire world of volunteer opportunities. But there are agencies that meet your passion and need, and whatever that is, find that agency, partner with that agency. That organization will help you design a program that will meet your needs, both individually, your group needs, and also meet the services that you're expecting to have as a for-profit company. So with that, I think I'll turn it back. And if anybody has any questions about DOMUS, we can talk about that later. Thanks so much.
You know, what's interesting is that actively non-engaged part. So does that mean they just say, no, I don't want to? Like they're actively not engaged. They just say, I don't want to. Thought that was an interesting oxymoron. Julia, thank you so much. I love statistics, even though they go right over my head. All right, let's go to Anthony DiLauro. Anthony DiLauro is the Executive Director of the Human Services Council, which is a nonprofit organization that oversees critical programs focusing on child advocacy, mentoring, alcohol and drug prevention, as well as medical and behavioral health care services and supportive housing. You bring over 20 years experience in nonprofit management to the Human Services Council. And you are best known as the executive director for the New York affiliate of Father Flanagan's Boys Town. Okay, who has seen the movie? You're kidding me, right? Seen the movie 100 times. Spencer Tracy, Mickey Rooney. Okay, well, you need to see the movie. It's a great movie. And it's wonderful to know that Boys Town is still doing its thing. But you are here as the Executive Director of the Human Services Council, which is in our area, Anthony DiLauro. So what is the one thing you recommend for businesses trying to work with nonprofits from your vantage point?
Well, in 3 different places, we did things a little bit differently. But I think that if I was working for a corporation reaching out to communities, my suggestion would be to be very understanding of what your philanthropic needs are before you sit down with a nonprofit. Make sure you understand what the organization wants, and make sure you're clear about your goals when you go in there to talk to nonprofits. I try not to view the nonprofit world, although the obvious thing is we need money and we need to serve people, and that's great. But I also see it as a service. We're a service provider like any other business. So it's kind of like if you're going to look for a financial service, you have to know what your financial goals are. So if you're coming into a charity, you have to know what your philanthropic needs or your company's marketing needs are before you sit down. I think a lot of people here probably already know that, but it's also important to understand how much the nonprofit understands what they can do, what their geographical area is, and how they make sure that your needs can be met in that area. I completely agree that you want to give for the right reasons, but some of the things, for example, are how, what types of people do does the nonprofit serve? What types of marketing can be done? How do you motivate your employees to work harder? I mean, we heard about the study. I actually have one of the studies right here that says happier employees are more motivated employees, and those who volunteer are definitely happier. So one thing to do is we have a program with the mentoring program where people volunteer and go into the community while they're at work. They leave for an hour, they go volunteer, and then they come back. And every one of those people, 268 of them in the Fairfield County area, all report back to us that it makes them happier, makes them feel good, and they go back to work. So that's one great thing. But there's also other things like networking. It always kills me. My wife works for an equities firm, that the guys sit behind the desk and then complain they can't find investors. Well, geez, we have 268 people going to an event who all are investors. You would think you'd come to the event. So, I mean, some things are very simple. I can give you an example of this. There was, anybody see the play In the Heights? No? Tony Award-winning Broadway play. I worked for a charity once, and I went to the guy and I said, you know, you guys should somehow get involved with this charity that does nonprofit work, giving scholarships to people in Brooklyn to make sure that they can go to a good college or a good school. He said, oh, we don't have time for charity. We do charity. At the end, we collect a couple bucks and we give it to the charity. I said, yeah, okay, that's great. I'm glad you do that. So I said, but seriously, we give scholarships out, and your entire play is about a woman who's poor, who lives in could be anywhere in the Heights, you know, in the Heights of New York or Brooklyn Heights or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a poor section. But she loses her scholarship because she cannot afford, or she can't do her work because she can't afford stuff, so she's working all the time instead of studying. And it's this really good play, and she has to tell her father, there's a piece where she has to tell her father that she's losing the scholarship. So I said, wouldn't it make sense if you came to our 500-person event in the Maritime and performed that? And they said, well, that would be good for you, but what do we get out of it? Well, geez, I would think those 500 people might actually go to your play. So, I mean, I'm just thinking, think outside the box. Think outside the box of what your corporation needs in terms of networking, what your corporation needs in terms of PR, nonprofits should be able to serve the people that you want to serve if you have philanthropic needs. If you don't have philanthropic needs and you don't feel like giving back, then you wouldn't be sitting here probably. But if you do, you want to work with the nonprofits that are if you're into homelessness, then you want to find the person that has the best in homelessness results possible, or at-risk youth. But if you want, but you also want, you should get your name out there. I think it's important to get your name out there when you're doing that and go deeper. Too often what we find in nonprofits is there's $1,000 here, $2,000 here, and everybody's fighting for the same money. I think that it'd be great if that's why I came to this, that nonprofits would work with one business and get their needs met if possible. And go deeper. That way they could see more of the work and feel like they're responsible for the work that's getting done.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, our next presenter, Bridget Fox. Bridget is the Executive Vice President of Volunteerism at the United Way of Western Connecticut, and that oversees volunteer programming for the United Way in both Stamford and Danbury. So we've got Stamford, Danbury, and Greenwich covered here, including promoting corporate and individual volunteer engagement, as well as training for local nonprofit agencies. So Bridget, take it away.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to start by saying I think it's a little unfair that I had to follow everyone because, but you really did set the stage for what I would say would be the one recommendation I would have to a corporate community. It's to create a culture where volunteerism and giving back to your community in whichever way your employees feel is best fits their needs is acceptable. So what that looks for you in your company or your corporation is dependent upon the size of your staff, your employee base, and really your corporate responsibility goals. It's been touched upon a number of times. around creating your corporate responsibilities business strategy so that the two are aligned. And I have witnessed in this position, and prior to this, I worked for the city of Stamford, I've seen that creating a culture where that type of volunteerism is available really does increase employee productivity and, of course, overall employee morale and happiness, which has all been addressed. But I want to just share that sometimes people don't necessarily, every person's different, and every person has a different idea of what volunteering means. And I think the role that we can play as the Volunteer Center of United Way and all of the panelists here is to provide different opportunities for people who may not, it doesn't always appeal to someone to go to a homeless shelter and serve a meal. That might make someone uncomfortable for whatever reason, or it might not get to the root of what they really want to be doing. So we like to encourage people to try different ways of sharing their volunteer skills. So to that end, one of the needs we find in the nonprofit community is board members. We need really qualified, good, engaged board members. So one of the programs we provide is called Board Serve Western Connecticut, and we just launched it last spring. And it is a training opportunity for you or someone on your team who would come for a 6-hour training to get an overview of board governance. So what it means to sit on a board, what the roles are, what the responsibilities are, and a general sense of nonprofit governance. So that is a really awesome way to engage employees because it gets your name out in the community. So it's Jane Smith, but Jane Smith works for Nestle Waters, and suddenly Nestle Waters' name is now on every board pamphlet that goes out, any communication that nonprofit is making. Your name as a company is now very visible in the community. And secondly, on that piece, it is a great way to develop skills. So I know from Elaine is in the room, and I actually sat on the St. Joseph's Parenting Center board, and frankly, I had never sat on a board before. And it really was an educational experience for me to sit in a room with highly qualified, very intelligent people trying to map the way for a new nonprofit in a community as large and as diverse as Stamford. And I feel like that experience was very developmental for me around financial budgeting, understanding the role that a board plays in guiding the mission of an organization. All of these skills are really important ways to develop, especially younger employees who may need some development skills. So those are some of my thoughts. It would be to create a corporate culture where volunteerism is embraced.
I just want to pick up on that. First of all, creating the culture of volunteerism. It reminds me that my first job after law school was with a very hotsy-totsy law firm called Milbank Tweed on Wall Street. And what struck me so much is that they were a very privileged place to work, and they were very discerning about the people they hired. But it was an expectation, forget about a culture, that you would devote a certain amount of hours of your week, of your day, to pro bono work. And their partnership was with legal services, which made sense because we were a law firm. But not only was it encouraged, if you didn't do it, you were not complying with their expectations for you. Now, I mean, that was pretty strong, and they were choosing the course of your volunteerism, which isn't, always the right fit for every company. But they even had a partner, as a partner of the firm whose sole job was pro bono management, which was pretty extraordinary. And so I think what you say has a lot of merit in companies that can afford to do it. And it's also about Viktor Frankl's In Search of Meaning, because that's where all of us really get something out of it. But the point is that I think that culture of volunteerism is a really cool thing. Okay, I'm going to go now to Ryan Odinak, the Executive Director of the Cultural Alliance of Fairfield County. And Ryan is the first director of the organization, launched in 2008, working to create a unified voice for arts and culture in the region and provide diverse services for nonprofit cultural organizations, artists, and creative businesses. So, Ryan, what is the one thing you would recommend for businesses that want to work with nonprofits in the arts area?
Well, been said, but I think that I can add to that, and just reinforcing that partnerships come in all shapes. And I think any nonprofit that you would talk to is open to that kind of negotiation. And so, they come in very large partnerships. One of the partnerships that I think is a great model is something that the Stanford Symphony has done with partnering with a high-end audio company and actually branding their season around that. Why? Audiences that come to Symphony are interested in sound and music, and they care about those kinds of things. So finding partnerships that really resonate with what you're trying to accomplish, but also understanding that it's also about the nonprofit, and that nonprofits do so much for our communities. We affiliate about 150 arts and culture nonprofits, and over the last year, just to kind of veer into an area that hasn't been covered, these nonprofits are businesses. They contribute to the economic health and welfare of our region. When individuals attend events, we found in our economic impact study that they actually are spending upwards of $30, between $26 and $30 in associated things. They're building the economy. Our organizations, of the 77 that we surveyed, contribute $139 million to the economy. They employed 4,000 people. So, there's real, to kind of put that spin on it too, and understand that supporting organizations is really helping to build the economic climate wherever you are. We know that arts and culture in general create vibrancy. And Fern asked me to kind of touch a little bit on how arts and culture are helping to build communities. I worked recently very deeply in a project in Bridgeport where the Downtown Special Services was a little skeptical about how can arts and culture really come to the table. They're always with a handout, can we have money or whatever. And yet through a project of creative placemaking where artists and arts organizations really came to the table to work directly with the Downtown Special Services, as they have in Stamford, very much so, to create dynamic communities where natural creative talent want to come and live. People want to live where there are services, where there are exciting things happening. And I think particularly the arts and culture organizations have a role to play in that, a very big role. And so, I would advocate that businesses come at it from wherever you are and at whatever level you are. People are really, really willing to negotiate. And we certainly ourselves, we partner with the Fairfield County Business Journal, and no money is, but they wanted to accomplish something, and they put it out there, and we've helped them accomplish that by creating an arts and culture page in their paper every week that we work on, and that accomplishes for us, but it also accomplishes something for them.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Okay, let's go to David Martin of Westport. David is the founding partner of a company called Solude Coffee. David's from the UK. I imagine we'll notice that in just a moment. And you founded your first startup company in 1983. You founded, developed, and then sold companies in the UK and Canada that primarily manufactured, imported, and wholesaled high-end jewelry. But to be closer to your wife's family, you moved to Fairfield County, welcome. And you continued as an entrepreneur by founding a real estate development and property management company that you currently operated. 2.5 years ago, you and 3 other co-founders formed Lux Coffee LLC with the brand name Solude. So tell us about that, and if you would, be kind, answer our question, what's the one recommendation that you would have for businesses that want to work with nonprofits, or for nonprofits that want to work with you?
Okay, I can explain that. Obviously, my background, I've always manufactured and distributed and wholesaled different products. I've worked for myself my whole life, pretty much. And I've sold a number of companies, and thank God, been very lucky. So a couple of years ago, when I met my partner, we decided, he sits on the board of a couple of nonprofits, and we decided how could we set up a company that would be an ongoing machine to generate funds for non-for-profits and be sustainable and keep going every month, sending checks out to different non-for-profits. So we founded Solude, and Solude supports 30 charities right now, 30 non-for-profits. And we, when I met Gareth, we decided how could we set it up so that it didn't just write checks once or twice a year. We wanted to be able to maintain a flow of money to the charities every month on an ongoing basis. So we came up with the idea of the coffee that we produce now. We have a very high-end patented product, and 20% of any sales that are made by either donors or basically it's promoted to donor bases or to companies where if you have 100 employees or 50 employees, all we're asking is that if you switch your habit to drink our coffee, that, sorry, I'm shaking here, I'm not used to public speaking, but you know, simply switch to Solude and 20% of everything that you use will go to the charity. So every month, these charities are collecting small checks or large checks, depending on how many employees they have, how many donors are going on the website and purchasing. Every year, the companies do gifting, so we have a lot of corporations, stockbrokers, real estate agents, people that gift to all of their clients, and every time they gift, they're giving to the charity. So it's not just a short-sighted one-off gifting process, they're gifting constantly. The other thing is we have corporations and businesses such as markets, supermarkets, village markets, that want to be able to give back to their communities as well. So by carrying our product on the shelf, we display it with the charities advertising, and every time a product is sold, we have one market in particular locally that is giving to 3 charities of our choice and donating to 1 charity that they chose of their own as well. So it's really something that has become an engine for raising money for non-for-profits. Businesses alike, if they come to us and they sign on board, we promote the business as well as asking them to simply switch to our coffee, which they're using every day. In fact, 50% of the country drink coffee. So if we could convince the 50% of the country to support and buy Solude coffee, all of your non-for-profits would be collecting 20% of the gross of that, not 20% of the profit, 20% of the gross. So we think we've come up with a very valuable way of raising funds.
Well, thanks, David. That's really wonderful to hear. It's such an unusual model of the gross, you know, as opposed to the net, because that's where it gets always lost in the details. That's a pretty cool thing. Okay, I want to go to Mia Schipani. Mia is the VP of Business Development at RMS Companies and Hotel 0 Degrees, bringing 20 years of strategic marketing, public relations, special events, and business development knowledge to the real estate and hospitality industries. Mia has worked in travel, hospitality, fashion, sports marketing, technology, commercial furniture, and real estate. I know, but you know, I believe this because wherever I go, I see Mia. She was awarded for pioneering a leadership program for the Lead Academy and has spent years volunteering to career coach and empower women and men in the community, and is a recipient of the 2006 40 Under 40 and the 2009 Fairfield County's Most Fabulous Females. Hey, Mia.
I am a serial volunteer. Most people who know me know that's a good title for me. I know there's mostly not-for-profits in the room, correct? Mostly. I wanted to just share my personal and professional experience with you. I have volunteered for probably over a dozen charities in this community. Prior to 9/11, I worked in New York City, and I owned many of my own businesses. So I was an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur is just like being at a not-for-profit. You have to be extremely strategic. You're shorthanded. You have very little resources, and you have to partner and be very. I mean, if there's one thing I'm going to suggest is you have to be as strategic as you possibly can. And when I say strategic, you have to act really business smart. There's a lot of things I'd like to share with you, but if there's one thing I can say from from a professional standpoint and from being a volunteer. Volunteers want to work with business smart not-for-profits, not-for-profits that are strategic. They don't want to be, they want to align themselves with, people who got it all, the organizations that have it all together. It's going to be too much work. It's overwhelming to them. And I can tell you firsthand, I started a not-for-profit with a group of people called the Fairfield County Sports Commission. And, over the years, I found myself creating their strategic plan. It was like a full-time job. That is not a good way to use your volunteer, unless that's what they want to do. So, number two, you really need to find out about people and companies and what their passions are. It's really important. Most not-for-profits just go at individuals. Many times they do without really trying to really understand what they're passionate about, and it may not be what they do every day. So it's really important to sit down and develop intimate relationships with people who you think may be board members, good board members or active volunteers. They could just be advisors. You need to find out what it is they really want to do. Cause marketing is really one of the most important things going on right now, and I can provide you with a lot of resources around that, but there's websites, there's statistics. I brought 1 million statistics. I don't know if you want to hear about them, but since 9/11, cause marketing is really critical, and you need to identify companies who believe in cause marketing. You can't take a company and try to teach them about it, but if you could become smart about it and find the companies who already believe in cause marketing, you'll have an easier time, less and less of a challenge, trying to align yourself with companies and CEOs and professionals that can help you. There's CEOs in Stamford and in Fairfield County that are incredible community leaders. They get their hands, dirty and they volunteer. Those are the ones you need to go after. You don't try to change an apple into an orange. So you need to do your homework and find out which companies really strongly believe in, and their leadership really believes in community involvement. And as it pertains to leadership skills and, health and wellness and improving productivity, and you need to go after the companies and individuals who already believe in those things. It's really important to identify board members who are very strategic and are doers. Coming from being on a board, I'm coming off many boards right now because it's very draining to sit next to non-doers. So try to keep that in mind. That's what you need to be looking for. Authentic messaging is very important to me. You, as a not-for-profit, need to really and truly understand who you are and what your mission is. And if you don't, then if you're trying to find partners, they're not going to believe you either. So authenticity is really important. And the more authentic you are and your organization is, I think you're going to have a much more successful time, securing people, funds, partners, and more. We use, in my company now, I work for a real estate developer. We own a lot of buildings and hotels in Stamford and in Norwalk and Southport. And our business development tactic is to be involved in the community. So my CEO and president is very involved in the community, and I spearhead all of the sales, marketing, and PR. And the way we drive our business is by getting involved in the community. And that is authenticity. People believe us because we are really doing what we say we're doing. We get out that my boss is, he probably sits on half a dozen boards, and he encourages everyone on our team to get involved in any charity that they're passionate about. We don't align our business with just real estate and hospitality or community development or economic development charities. It's really about the individuals in our company. So I just I don't know if, sometimes you really need to just find out about people. It's about just getting personal and intimate and developing intimate relationships. And thank you.
And then our last presenter is Liz Osta, who is the owner of Nagi Jewelers in Stamford, which has been in business in Stamford since 1980. The Ostas host 3 or 4 nonprofit events in their store every year. They pick a charity, provide the food and drink through relationships with other business owners, and they offer a percentage of sales from the evening to the charity. They also donate items to many local auctions. Hi, Liz, and welcome. Sure.
Everybody has kind of a lot of things that are already, you guys are all nonprofit. Please don't come knock the door after this, but many of you already have. I will preface this by saying that I get at least 50 to 60 solicitations a week. People that are having functions, want us to donate or have something to do with it. I'm not going to really talk about volunteerism here. I think everybody feeling in this room that everybody should volunteer, everybody should find time to do something for someone else, how human nature is. I'm going to just mention a few things that, how do we decide who we're going to work with? As we get all these solicitations, I rarely say no to anybody. We pick and choose a couple throughout the year. We're having an event next week, Bennett breast cancer, something we are passionate about. But I will say this. I live in Stamford, I work in Stamford, and I'm very passionate about organizations that are local to me. So that when I am solicited from people, because the word's out there that we give, everybody tells me the word's out there. We're on every single auction book there is, we give, and we're happy to give. Small item, large item, that isn't the issue. But we live and work here, our kids went to school here, we're very local. So that's where we decide where the cutoff is. So when people come in from, I won't even say, but I've never heard of them, but they've heard of us. That's where I have my second thoughts about why are you here and why would I give to you. That's all I have.
Okay, that's great. I'm just going to wrap up before getting you back to Fern. I've been taking some notes. So Tom says to look for unusual opportunities. He gave the example of the tag driving seniors buses as a place where you can promote what you're doing, but also partner for the betterment of the community. Julia says that you've got to partner with a specific agency, that the more specific you can be in terms of matching your goals would be the best for you. Tony asks you to know your philanthropic needs and think outside the box for events and partnerships. Bridget encourages you to create a culture where volunteerism is acceptable, and also that we need to be training people to be on boards. I totally agree with that, so that people on boards can know their expectations and feel comfortable with what they're doing. Ryan asks again for you to find the right relationships that are mutually beneficial to both organization, the nonprofit and the for-profit. David talked about his company. He reminded us that 20% of what you spend at Solude Coffee will go to a nonprofit, and the more we can get the word out about that, the more money will filter back into nonprofit agencies. Mia encourages you to know a person's passions so that you and your company should be able to match a volunteer with the right person, and as a nonprofit, try and find somebody on your board who's a worker and a doer. And as a nonprofit, try and find for-profit companies that are active in cause marketing, which sounds to me like a Google search term, as well as understanding that the nonprofits that have authentic messaging will be more likely to attract money from the for-profit sector. And then Liz said, look, if you're going to approach me, understand that I'm a Stamford business. I live and work, and my kids went to school in Stamford. So understand that if you are for and about Stamford, I'm more likely to give to you. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Fern. Thank you all in the panel.
As someone who's done a lot of nonprofit events as the organizer, and my job is to go out and find sponsors, I often try to match the right cause with the right product, if you will. So I wanted to give you a couple of really hands-on ideas that these guys inspired. You can support nonprofits that help your business by looking for things like in-kind donations. I had 2 major companies work with me for different charities. They couldn't donate money, but they printed my program journals for events, and that saved me about $3,000 each time. Bagels and food products for people launching new products. In California, we had a 12 million dog march, and Fizz was launching a new flavor of their soda, so they provide beverages for everybody, 1,200 people attending a dog-related event. Media coverage is something that all of you who are nonprofit know about, but all the for-profits like that. They like to be in the paper or on TV, knowing that they're showing that they're working with the community, showing that they care. Space for an office for an executive director. Anthony where's he? Anthony right now has the Human Services Council building in Norwalk, and he has space available in there. And you don't need to have a whole private office. Sometimes you just need a space for 1 or 2 people to work. If you get office supplies, some of your businesses maybe order from Staples or order from WB Mason. Sorry, Katie, where are you? Staples. You may be able to order a little extra and donate that to a charity because you get a bigger discount. Shredding services, people pay for that. I know that the Stamford Chamber of Commerce, one of our supporters, has shredding days several times a year so that you can bring your piles. Storage space for your files, scanning services, data processing, accounting services, legal services. We talked about being on a board, and if you have those kinds of services, then that's something that can really help out nonprofits. And technology. We have people who have, they have large servers, and you have room on your server to help a charity by not having to pay for server services. Those kinds of things are helpful. Underwriting. Katie, where are you? Katie over there is from Staples, and we have been trying to put together some things, and she has been working so hard to help the charities that I work with get discounts on everything that they need that she can offer from her center, and she's promoting specifically her copy center. So it helps because she gets the word out of what she's doing, and then the charity gets some feedback and some help. Auction items, be creative and don't just ask from Liz, you know, she has jewelry and most people would go and ask Liz for jewelry. She has a store, so that makes sense. There's a guy who he has gems and he has a business in Manhattan, wanting to expand here. And he said to me, how do I promote my business? I said, what do you do? He says, I give people jewelry. I said, well, when someone walks up to someone and says, that's a gorgeous piece of jewelry, where did you get it? What are they going to say? Say, I got it from this auction. They're not going to say, I got it from Special Stones. So we changed it, and his auction item was to come into his office and learn how to cut a diamond with your family, and then go to lunch and talk about diamond cutting. And then you got to try to cut a diamond. That's a unique auction item. It didn't cost him anything, but it really promoted who he is. And the person who won it has been talking about it now for 2 years and has been referring people to him, and he's actually sold jewelry. So try to be a little creative. That's where if you call me, I can help you come up with something really creative. Also, Lighting by Marks gives away, the only marketing they do is charities. They give away a $3,000 outdoor lighting package for people to use in auctions. Venture Photography, is anyone here? There they are. They give away packages for your auction that are so amazing. They recently came and helped me with a dog event, and we took pictures of people with their pets, and everybody loved that, right? Great thing. Volunteering. Not only you do all the things that everybody up here said, but you can offer to do packing. For example, we all have gift bags and things like that. We have people getting items overseas to our service people. We have packing, what do they call it, the little amenities for homeless people to give out. So why not have a packing day for your employees to go over all together to one charity and help with something like that? One day, and it's a really big help. Distributing school supplies, disaster relief, homeless shelter meals, making phone calls. The Bank of America and Travelers sends volunteers to the Amistad Center to work a gala and be volunteers to help with the auction. Helping build a home, Habitat for Humanity, those kinds of things. Then for fundraising, David talked about the opportunity to just convert your coffee use in the office to Solude and ask employees if they want to buy Solude online, and then 20% goes to the charity. There's North American Power is if you convert people to using North American Power, then they give money to charities. So there are a bunch of businesses out there that don't require you to hire an event planner and so on, but you can raise money and it's a residual kind of thing. Nagi has done an amazing job of bringing people in and letting them shop and have a really fun time. percentage of sales goes to the charity afterwards. So consider if you have a location, you can have people come into that location and it's a fun night and you get all kinds of opportunities to raise money. There's a couple of fashion stores that do that. Saks Fifth Avenue does it. There's a store in Greenwich called Rome. That is a new store that's trying to get people in. Vineyard Vines does the same thing. So don't be afraid to ask, if I can bring in 50, 60 people, would you want to have a night like that? The same thing with restaurants. They will do nights where they're hosting. Patricia's right here in downtown did an Alzheimer's night on a Wednesday, which is a quiet night. They did 3 seatings that night and raised about $6,000 with just a percentage of sales from food that night. Great way to get all those new people into your restaurant to try your restaurant. Offer a percentage to a charity. Bliss Ice Cream, small little place in Coscob, has fabulous flavors. And so they started having nights for people to come in for ice cream, and a percentage of sales went to Paws, which is a dog charity. In the end, they wound up creating a mold of a dog bone and created a new flavor of dog-friendly ice cream, and now it's their biggest seller. So you never know where it's going to go. Co-op advertising. If you have a business and you put a regular ad in the paper, you can give a section of that to a nonprofit and let them work with it. Kalari Auto Group has a running ad on the patch thing, and they use it to honor people in the community, sponsored by the Kalari Group. So consider that if you do a Valpak or clip a coupon, any of those kinds of things, that would help. And then, of course, there's all the traditional stuff, which you all know about, you know, go to a golf outing, buy tickets to a gala, sponsor things, buy an ad in a journal. I'm sure all the for-profits in here have gotten a lot of those requests. There are over 1,200 charities registered in Stamford alone. So think about that, 1,200 charities all looking for money. And I don't know how many businesses there are, but they're getting very tired, to the point where the mayor of Stamford asked me to come in and talk about how do we make them stop. So here's a bunch of other ideas, opportunities for you to come up with a unique way to work with people that might be passionate about your cause. Hope that's helpful. So questions, take question and answer. If there are any questions for any of our
Saturday, November 2nd at the Wilton Library, we are doing another board serve training, which is from 8:30 to 2:30 that day, and we have a board coach who comes in and provides an overview of everything I already talked about, and then we would work with you as the nonprofit agency. We ask that you come to a 3-hour training later that week, that following Wednesday, to also work with him to hear, again, because ideally we will match the board candidates with a nonprofit, but we want to ensure that the nonprofit is ready and able to take them on. We don't want to make the match not great. We want this to be an experience for the board member that's very positive. So that's all happening in November, and I'd be happy to talk to you about how to do it.
We use at DOMUS, because DOMUS is a large agency, we serve nearly 1,000 kids. Our budget is about 13.6 million. So we really use all of the tools that are available to market. And one of the ways that we market through social media is we have a very active Facebook page. We have a very active Twitter feed. I also have a Twitter account in addition to the company itself. One of the things that I can recommend highly to anybody who's using social media is use one of the platforms that help you to manage your feed, like Hootsuite, which is what we use, but there are others as well. Learn what it is, follow your Google Analytics, learn when your people are online, when they are looking at their Facebook. It is during business hours. Saturday mornings are also very good. Make sure that your messaging is not overwhelming. I got a Twitter feed from a nonprofit last week, and there were 6. They gave me 6 in a row. And I wrote the guy. It was a direct message. I said, are you kidding me? You're sending me 6? I'm not going to read any of them. So make sure that when you're talking, that you're talking in a way that is engaging. Use visuals. Make sure that sometimes your visuals are not just you retweeting or forwarding, but you're actually doing some original conversation, even if that is a photo that you've taken yourself with a small little byline about what the photo is. You don't have to be writing a blog, but try and make it original. In the early days, LinkedIn, under Mark's direction, and I, on a sidebar, we'll talk about this later, was be very careful about who it is that you let into your LinkedIn network. I have found that, in fact, that broadening your LinkedIn network so that that critical mass makes a huge difference, and be generous with what you're sharing. Give as much as you take so that people are interested in participating with you and being an active conversationalist with you in all the social media that you use.
Taking Julia's advice so I can tweet this right now. I have about 20,000 followers. So we'll just do it right now.
And I just wanted to add one thing at the very least, and this is not really social media, but if you're not using Constant Contact for an e-form of newsletter, if you're not sending out e-invitations in addition to your hard copy, at the very least, do those things. Because there's a demographic, there's a portion of the market out there that you're trying to reach as a nonprofit that is viewing things solely nowadays on their smartphones, on their tablets, etc. They're not going to bother opening up their mail and looking at invitations or a newsletter that you're mailing. So you've got to do both things.
As a for-profit company, we actually do use Facebook, and we use a couple of others. We use Twitter, and we let people know what events are coming up, and we have landing pages for all of our non-for-profits so that their donor base goes straight into their landing page, which redirects them to the non-for-profit's website. And just to give an example, we're working with a dance studio in Fairfield, and whenever we have an event coming up, we will promote the event for them as well by letting people know what's going on, and then redirecting things to their website, and then they'll have an event where we'll support them. And everybody from the event, their board members, their donors, start to use the coffee, and that generates the... So that's how we use it to promote